Welcome to Carl Brown's Reality. Man, this is going to be a jabbing show. Tune in. Call your people. Tell them to tune in. Because I have Mr. Michael Jones, a friend, a real friend, a masterful chess player, who is the author of an exciting book I've read cover to cover, Secondhand Stories. Now, I want to read this introduction to you that I wrote, I had a little help. Because it says a lot about the book. I hope it says a lot about Michael, plus I wrote it, and I want to read it. Michael Jones is the best writer I know, but sometimes I wonder if I know him at all. The Japanese believe we have three faces: the face others see, the face we see in the mirror, and our real face, our true face. The face Michael shows to others is seldom without a smile. More often it is accompanied by a witty remark and his trademark chortle. He has never been a stranger. Michael's outward face greets others as potential friends for life. No one objects. But in his stories, we see a different face. There's something deeper going on behind that smile. Michael's public face does not show his hatred of prejudice, his loathing of hypocrisy, and battles of discrimination, because these are issues he deals with in his work. He's a complicated man who, like some Greek oracle, is able to translate big ideas into the language that all can understand. As a reporter, he's more than just the facts man. Michael is a muckraker, a history buff, and a crusader. Consider the topics that interest him as a writer: culture, particularly music, social injustice, and politics. In this book, you'll find a loving profile of Anne Braden, a deceased civil rights activist, a profile of Michael Pauley, a prisoner with hepatitis C who's denied medical treatment by the state, and the history of jug music, a forgotten African-American art form that has some roots here. By telling these stories, I think Michael is providing us with a glimpse of his own mirror image, his second face. These are the things he thinks about when no one else is around. Now, the final face, his true face, only Michael will ever know. One suspects that there are things you cannot or will not commit to print. So when you read this book, be sure to read it between the lines. Michael, this is really outstanding. This is a collection of articles you wrote
for Leo.
Tell me about this.
Some for the Courier Journal.
Okay.
Well, I guess the book sort of started out as a reclamation project because no one really thought Leo would last as long as it has. So it's been like 15, 16 years now. And so they never kept copies of the early issues. They are back issues. They just kept one copy of each issue, and they would combine them in a hardback book. And a few years ago, Bob Schulman and myself, Bob was one of the founders of Leo, we tried to get someone to scan them in, but we couldn't find anyone to pay for the expenses. So I thought at least I'd save mine. So,
right.
If nothing else was left from Leo, people could read my articles.
Absolutely. Well, it's like leaving a child behind.
So as I got into it, going through the archives, I saw that there were bits of the city's history and interesting characters. And so I expanded it to include some non-Leo stories.
Right. How many stories?
15 stories.
Do you have a favorite?
My favorite story would be the one about Cush Griffith because I was just raised a big fan of James Brown and Problem at Funkadelic, and he played with both of them. And when I met him when I was like 19, or I first saw him perform at Zena's, and it was a few years before I actually interviewed him. And this is probably my second or third story for Leo. And we are still friends to this day. I mean, he flew in from Colorado and played the book release party.
Cool.
And so I felt like I had a lot of knowledge. I knew the background.
Right.
I didn't have to do a lot of research for that story.
Right.
Nice. All the records were already in my collection.
Right. Michael, I want to discuss some serious issues today, like race and so forth. But I got to ask you this first. Do you think I'm handsome?
Of course. Who
Okay,
doesn't?
thank you. Tell how we met.
I think it was like 1993 when we met, and Leo had started the Six Pack, which was like six writers that took turns trading off the feature articles. And so we got together downtown at some little cafe
Yeah.
every what was it? Every Thursday morning or something for breakfast.
Right.
And you and I used to make fun of this other guy, and then we start hanging out after that.
Yeah. Now, people get a pen and paper because at the end of this show, you can have a chance to write down what you need to know to order this book. It's $18. You pay the tax, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Or not. Okay. W.E.B. Du Bois, someone you and I both admire, black intellectual, turn of the century.
Yeah, my girlfriend says I always quote Du Bois. So.
Very brilliant man. Tell us, well, he said that race would be the defining issue of the 20th century and how true that was. Do you think it may be the defining issue for the 21st century?
I think that race is as important in America as it's ever been. I mean, look at what happened in New York with Sean Bell, the guy that got shot 50 times when he was on the night before his wedding. But it's more complex with the immigration issue and also with the thing with the terrorism and profiling of Arab men and stuff. Like, even
you have a problem
I heard
with that? You have a problem with profile?
yes, I do. You spend so much time like looking at a certain group of people that other people that are doing bad things.
Not at all. I mean, if somebody comes with a swastika on and a skinhead, I'll be watching them too.
Not all Arabs are look the same. I mean, Islam is like one of the world's biggest religions.
Now, back to W.E.B. Du Bois. Who was he?
Well, he was a professor. He was, at the time, he was the nemesis of Booker T. Washington.
Right.
Who Booker T. Washington thought that Black Americans should stay more in agriculture and not aim for the higher arts and things like that. And Du Bois had this idea that there was this talented tenth that would be teachers, that scholars that would teach the rest of African Americans. And this is an idea of like vanguard elitism that he grew out of, because he died a communist, and also he gave up his American citizenship and went to Africa. And people, when they talk about Du Bois, they just talk about this one period. But he lived to be 90 years old, and he changed and grew. I mean, he's fascinating. Actually, in 1885, there was a meeting of all the black intellectuals in America, and it was right here in Louisville.
Cool.
And it was a forerunner of the NAACP, because Du Bois, of course, was one of the founders of the NAACP, and he ran their literary magazine, Crisis, which published like a lot of black writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, and gave rise to the Harlem Renaissance. So he's a very seminal figure in America. He had some other connections to Louisville, actually, because he did a study called the Philadelphia Negro, and it was funded by the Speed family somehow, or organization they were affiliated with.
Okay. When you just spoke, you said Negro and you said colored people. Now,
that's the language of Du Bois's time, is what I was using.
What's the language of our time?
Well, African American, but even that's not the percent. I still use black and I prefer black, because African American is an imprecise term.
Like
Because what if someone
American,
is from Africa? You know,
right?
Some Stanley Crouch, who is, I don't really agree with him. He's a black conservative, but he has a very interesting ideas, and he wrote a column about Barack Obama that said that he wasn't black like him, or he's not African American like him. Can't remember he's a great jazz critic, Stanley Crouch.
Now, do you believe in diversity? You should celebrate diversity. Okay. Do you know that we have a browning of society as we have? Okay. So, in 1,000 years, don't you think it'd be great to still have diversity or not?
I think that this is a country of immigrants, so we're always going to have diversity.
Well,
because we'll always have new blood coming in to infuse. I think.
But what if the people kept themselves pure? Italian, black, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Would you have something to celebrate?
I think people have their own individual choices. You know, some people are going to stay pure. Some people are going to mingle. I mean, that's what makes this country great.
You helped me out on an issue of reparations. I'm for it. You're for reparations. That's like a touchstone litmus test. But your idea was that this money be put into a college fund to let blacks get a chance to go to college. It's paid for. I think it's good. And
I think college should be free for everybody, but if we're going to do reparations, I think that is the more reasonable thing to do.
Yeah. Not many Republican precinct captains feel this way, but I agree with reparations. I think your plan is good. Now, let me ask you one other thing. If you were president and you had the responsibility of the free world on your back, living in an age of terrorism, living in an age of racial strife, living in an age where the planet's resources are being depleted, living in the age of outrageous capitalist greed, what would you do? What would the first big thing? Would it be healthcare? Would it be, pull out of Iraq? Or top 2 or 3 things?
Well, I would think that the first thing would be to change our Middle East policy, because I think that all the problems that we have in the Middle East stem from the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, and that America has never been a neutral participant in it. We've always been on the side of the Israelis, and I don't think we should switch sides, but I think we should be more of a non-biased participant in that.
Even-handed.
And I think we should have universal health care, which John Yarmouth is telling us that they're going to work on in Congress, and I think education should be free thing.
Okay, I'll vote for you.
All right.
I'll put on.
I might run. If John can win,
man,
he's more liberal than me. Really liberal.
And I'm more liberal than both of you. But
I was like at Leo with a picture of Karl Marx that you gave me on the wall.
Oh God, that's funny. You're right. That's funny. What should be done in the Sudan?
Man, you're like
what?
I'm solving the world's problems.
Well, I don't know about your question. Sudan, the hundreds of thousands that have been
I think that it's definitely genocide, and definitely United Nations needs to get involved. And I think Americans in general, we need to learn more about Africa. Like, it seems to be the new fad now. Celebrities are adopting African children, and all this. And there's a new Leonardo DiCaprio movie about blood diamonds and things like that. But, I'd heard for years and years about the genocide in Darfur, and it was only a couple of weeks ago I sat down and read about the history of it. I never knew what the situation was with the natives and the Arabs and all these things. The world's a lot more complicated than we know in America by watching CNN and Fox News.
Explore the complexity.
Well, I mean, just in Africa alone, just
Travel, religious.
yeah, the travel problems and stuff.
Right.
Because I mean, all these nations were created by Western powers.
Right.
I mean, these aren't people that, in a lot of cases, that see themselves as citizens of one country.
Right.
And similar to the problems that we have in Iraq. It's a Western artificial country.
Well, Michael Jones, I hope someday you are president. You're one of the best men I know.
All right.
Thanks. Okay, kids, if you stumble back into your beer and pretzels, get that piece of paper, get that pen. We're going to try to get this book. I've read it cover to cover. I couldn't put it down. It's up all night reading it. It's outstanding. These are outstanding articles, 15 of them, portraits of individuals and culture and so forth in this community. It is a must read. So buy it. Buy others. We need more both than one. We need to sell all these. This book will do it. $18. Michael allegedly pays the tax. So do it. I'm going to come back here in a minute, and I'm going to talk to you about race. See you then.
Secondhand Stories is available at the Borders Books downtown and the one in Gardner Lane, and at both locations of Carmichael's bookstore.
Fooled you for 15 years. I believe it was Mark Twain who said that believe nothing of what you read and half of what you see. For 15 years, I have put forth the fact that I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Northern European, Germanic type, but I'm only 1/4 German. I'm 1/4 Scotch English, and I'm 1/2 Sioux Indian, cheekbones. Now, there aren't that many natural blonde-haired, though graying-haired, blue-eyed men in Louisville at my age, but let me tell you something. If you believe what you read, if you believe what you see on this television, if you believe things you hear on radio, be careful. Because, as Google said, that a lie told often enough becomes the new truth, just as the truth became that Carl Brown, the plain brown rapper, referred to in one of the hate letters as the plain brown shirt, is primarily Indian and only 1/4 German. So be careful out there. Things may not be as they seem.